Canceled my thing.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
It is the Freedom Variant. I'm feeling very Freedom Variant-y tonight.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Good.
It's been a while.
Good show then. Yeah, I know. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah. I took 2 weeks off. I've been, trying to persuade or convince or talk to people about voting for Larry Sharpe is a reasonably important effort and a reasonably important piece of time that I can invest. So I've been taking the time on the weekends to go around and hang out with Larry a little bit, ask people to vote for him, have conversations with people in my area about Larry Sharpe. And guys, I think it's going to pay off. I think we're getting him some votes, and I think it's worth it. I have some friends that are upset with me, but that's not much I can do about it.
They'll get over it.
Or they'll die with a grudge.
Yeah. That'll be good. Yeah, I mean, Larry was in Rochester last weekend. That was great. It's good to see him and, see a few folks out to see him speak. And he was just on the radio in Rochester today, too, on the local NPR affiliate. Was talking with a couple of Working Families Party folks, and Howie Hawkins was on the show, too. They're talking third-party stuff and Andrew Cuomo's scheme to destroy third parties in New York State.
But Kevin, we have the Working Families Party and the Conservative Party. I don't think you understand how they haven't destroyed. Like we have other options on the ballot, Kevin.
Oh yeah, no, we have two candidates on the ballot. Period. That's what it is. First time since the 40s.
Yes,
we've had that. So
look, it's embarrassing when I got to the Libertarian Party and I mentioned this often, but I don't mind repeating myself. Kind of as a conservative that doesn't get upset about religion, that understands bodily autonomy is important, that people have human rights, human dignity, and on some level that we treat immigrants and illegal immigrants or quote unquote illegal immigrants. The debate's confusing, and recycling issues to get people upset drives me crazy. I lost my love for the Conservative Party. They kept basically they're just a rubber stamp for the Republicans. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's more than that, because they do get upset over religion and things like that it doesn't answer my needs for what I want from my government. Like that's the reality.
Yeah. And there's you should listen to that show that Larry did today. Like, again, you're going to hear the left make their argument. The Working Families Party, oh, this is how we exercise power. This is how we get policy, change to happen, is by running, having this ballot line, having this party, even though what they always do every single time is support the top line Democratic candidate. That's what they do. Every single election, they hardly ever run their own candidates for anything. And the thing is that if you want to exercise power in that way, it doesn't actually work unless you actually follow through on your threat. The threat is always, we could do this. We could run our own candidate, but they never do, and the Democrats know it. So why give them any respect or policy positions? Again, not that I want the WFP stuff to get through most of the time, but
well, that's the thing with the Conservatives. The Conservatives have failed to take a real position that's distinct from the Republican Party, and purportedly, conservatives have lots of distinct positions from the Republican Party. They never get to voice them. They never have an impact on policy. And then they beg me, the Freedom Variant, to vote for their guy, Lee Zeldin, who is a progressive. He's so distinctly similar to Kathy Hochul that I've got to tell every single conservative, most Republicans, and a lot of a good percentage of anti-authoritarian Democrats, it don't matter which one of those two you're voting for, because they're pretty much the same.
Tim, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I don't think they're the same. I think they're terrible and unique in horrifying ways. They have their own reasons why they're terrible, but they happen to agree on a bunch of stuff, like growing government and controlling our lives.
You want
And
more cops? You're getting more cops. Everybody,
yeah,
like
no,
both of
they
them,
both want to do that. Like
they both
that's your
do
thing.
that.
They're both they can't get enough of like sending more money to police departments, more cops, more control over our lives.
Yeah,
What
guys, they'll take care of the minutia of your lives for you, right? They're gonna make more rules. Lee Zeldin's promising executive orders day one, right?
yeah.
Executive order, declared emergency, executive order, declared like he's going to I don't fire the DA of New
Oh,
York
yeah,
City.
fired DA of Manhattan. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's like, no, you're not actually able to do that, right? Like if you want to get rid, you can criticize them. If the DA is actually breaking the law, there are impeachment proceedings that you could follow to have that person removed. Like you can't unilaterally remove the DA unless and again, it's not even a unilateral thing. Like they have to have like broken the law.
Right, right. He's going to try to make the claim that not enforcing some of the laws is in fact breaking the law, and that there's a
Yeah.
law that he's violated to do that. I don't
No,
think it's a successful
no,
promise.
there's always been like DA like discretion in this stuff. Like it's always been a thing, and like that's how it works for better or worse.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's within a DA's power to do that. So we should say hi to some of the folks who've
we
joined in.
should.
Shelly,
Hey,
thanks for
Shelley.
being here as always. Roger says sharp as
Roger,
my vote. That you aren't good for anyone except themselves. Yeah.
thank you. I agree.
Hey, Patty, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you. And
Patty's got some great stuff going on up in Plattsburgh. We're going to touch on it in the show at some point. Like she's fired up. We got a libertarian decided to run for office, and it's good stuff. So we'll talk about it later, though.
yeah,
We'll
we can
keep her
do that.
hanging in there. We don't want to burst her bubble right now. Right in the background, you see that's Patty, Larry, and the Zachary Remian. So I got a story to tell.
Right on, yeah. Love to hear it later. But yeah, and Clinton here.
Clint,
What's
all
up,
right.
Clint?
Clint's one of the guys I'm working on here. We got to talk a little bit more about his he's a dedicated third party guy. He sees the reality that third parties are a better answer, but he wants the potential of a better future. I get it, man. I do, bro.
Yeah.
I get it. It's just I'm voting for Larry Sharp because that's the only vote that counts. But
Yeah.
the other guys, I don't care if we lose by one vote, it can be my vote, and you can be mad at me.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's
These others should
and
be.
I'm not that like I know like some folks will make this argument, and like oh like Lee Zeldin's not going to win anyway. It doesn't matter. Like I don't even care. Even if he could win, like I don't want him to.
I know.
I don't think he would be good for New York State either. Like, and I'm not gonna, give my consent to that. No matter how much I dislike Kathy Hochul, like Lee Zeldin would be bad in different ways.
Right, right.
But and Joe says, if we could fire an elected official, we would collectively fired Cuomo. Like, well, he almost did get fired. He almost legit did get impeached. But again, there's a process for that, and there should be recall elections in New York State. It's not really a thing here.
Something New
Like
York doesn't have. We can't ever threaten our elected officials with a recall. It's both. It's a problem.
No, yeah, we should be able to do that. There should be like a threshold that you can reach, like, and it should be significant, right? You need to gather enough signatures to be able to, remove someone from office or at least trigger a new election. One of the few things I think California is actually right about is their ability to do that, and then a few other states have that as well.
Yeah, and it's actually it gets people's voices involved in politics, and whether to recall an elected official is make for a very exciting time. It's also a level of accountability. Like if you get recalled, you've got to change your attitude, right? Or unfortunately, like Gavin Newsom, win it handily, and then you don't have to change your attitude. You can double down on your garbage crap.
And then you feel like you have a mandate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the challenge.
Yeah.
Roast.
Yep.
But
so there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack. New York State is not a very democratic state. The two-party system has obviously failed us. The arguments that I see trying to persuade me to vote for Zeldin, they're not persuasive. I'm sorry, guys. They're not.
Yeah, it's just He's going to abuse executive power in the same way that Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo did. Like
Yeah.
if you're against like the principle of like using emergency powers in an inappropriate and tyrannical way during the pandemic, like Lee Zeldin's promising to do the same thing. He's like, hey, we're going to declare this a crime emergency. We're going to suspend all these like due process things. Like, hey, whoa, that's
Nobody.
that might
That's
come
what people
back to
don't
haunt us,
understand.
guys.
Like, I'll back to that guy Robert Force. I love him, but like he bumped up against an issue with police that was handled authoritarianly, and he likes Lee Zeldin because Lee Zeldin did him a personal favor when he was a younger guy. I kind of that's like the only persuasive argument I've heard as far as voting for him. Like he did him a good solid that a representative should do back when he was a state rep. So
Well,
okay,
I mean, so,
like
it's
okay,
funny. Like that's how a lot of like incumbents stay in power. Like, and again, uh, no dig to that guy. It's just the
yeah,
like and I used to help with this. I used to work for Congressman Richard Hanna, back in the day, and I
yeah,
worked in his like as a staff assistant in his office, and you'd help with like someone be like, hey, I'm having trouble with the IRS, and you'd send some letters and you try to get them help or whatever, right?
yeah,
And doing that, people are like, well, now I feel like I need to vote for this guy because like he helped me deal with my IRS issue or like whatever, right? And
yeah,
I had a lot of folks like when I was running for Congress, like who would say that about Joe Morelli, and they'd be like, "Well, I don't like his policies, but like he did help me with like this thing." It's like, "Oh yeah, like every House of Representatives office will do that." Like I'm sure like the staff that you work with are wonderful, but like everyone does that. I would do
yeah.
that too. So with the Republic, everyone would do that.
Yeah, I remember that was always an issue. Like when I was running, how are you going to solve this unemployment crisis? Well, I'd be like, well, like the unemployment crisis is the government response to COVID, so I would handle it by fighting that, And Robert's out in the audience. That's why, yeah,
Yeah,
like, look, Robert, your argument was the most persuasive. Robert Force again had his land taken in Otsego County. He stood when all politicians turned their back on me. He did some,
that's good.
yeah, that's great. I get it. And his argument was persuasive. Look, I want to point out an interesting little dynamic that I noticed the other day. One of the Trafalgar polls, which like is a polling outfit that supposedly hit some pretty good marks last election. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but every like year a polling outfit hits the marks really well the last election. So they're the one everybody goes to this election. So that's what's going on with this Trafalgar group. And they're saying Lee Hochul is ahead by, or wait,
Lee Hochul, yeah.
Lee Hochul is ahead by 1
Merge them
point.
together, and
Kathy Zeldin is down by 1 point. Well, anyways, they're both polling below 50%. And Zeldin has like a 1% lead. And I'm like, instead of being angry at me for convincing people to vote for Larry Sharp, you should be thanking me because that 4% undecided, that's Larry Sharp. That's Larry Sharp. And if Zeldin wins, you guys should thank us, not be angry with
There
us.
you go.
That's it.
Exactly.
Simple math.
Nice.
So that's it.
All right. So should we transition to the topic of the show? My title. Do we need a pandemic amnesty?
I'm ready for this.
All right, cool.
We should declare. Let me read. You read it. I'll read it my way. You read it your way. Let's see if I can grab the headline. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. That's what I heard when I read it.
That's what it says. So that's an Atlantic article, and I'll share the link to it too. If you can get past the paywall, they do have a paywall here. So the interesting thing about this is like, one, I'm very familiar, like not very, like I'm a fan of the author actually. Like, so Emily Oster, like, is I don't know if you've read any of her work, but she was one of the ones like pretty early on being like, hey guys, the data says like we should be sending kids back to school, and there's problems, and with keeping kids out, and there's problems with the the masking policies that we have. She was the one who's pointing at the data and being like, we're approaching COVID wrong. And so what's interesting about her is like something that's like weirdly not acknowledged to me among like conservatives, because like when I read her things, as I think like, well, she's probably going to bring some evidence to like actually talk about like why this policy makes sense or doesn't make sense, right? And so that's why I like a lot of her work for that. And again, it's interesting to me to see conservatives and libertarians be like, look at this COVID, totalitarian monster, like say that like she deserves amnesty. And I'm like,
Oh, hold
well,
up, though. Hold up. It's not her. It's we get associated with in our brains a type of news coming from the Atlantic. So the response isn't to her, and it's actually obviously not to the article because I read the article and it was okay. All right. So I, I get what you're saying. This pushback, it's to the
oh, there's a
Atlantic.
bunch of people retweeting her and like directing a whole bunch of vile like at her,
I
like
know.
specifically. And again, and a bunch of people are like responding to that concept, right? And that concept of like should we have amnesty is kind of like move beyond that, which is eventually where we're going to take this conversation to like regardless of this article that triggered this discussion, like at what point do we say like, yeah, you misunderstood things at the time, but you corrected yourself, so that's fine. And at what point do we say no, the damage that you caused with your policies is so severe that like we can't like forgive you for that. And that not only like do we not morally forgive you, but there ought to be some accountability, perhaps even criminal, for the policies that you carried out.
I do think some people feel that way. I do lean in that direction. I do think that things were handled so incompetently that I don't know what to say about it. I think that there was evidence early on that schools should not have been closed. That health officials and schools were circular arguing, saying an abundance of caution is a metric that we need to keep our kids home. Even though our infection rates are nowhere near what should be a concern, we're going to keep the kids out of school for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We're going to cancel sports. We're going to cancel. And look, public school doesn't have a lot going for it. The only reason my kid goes is because he likes sports. Okay. Like that's a reality.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that people are still angry about. And a lot of these people are going to get reelected. There were other articles from the Atlantic that were like also not as nice and
Mm,
as like if you read
like the thing about the Atlantic is they're kind of all over the place. Like they lean
true.
slightly left, but they have conservative writers. Like they have like I'm not sure exactly where to peg like Emily Oster specifically.
Right, right.
But they have people all over the spectrum, and including like a lot of authors who are like, we need to shut down everything and mask up forever, and like those people are ridiculous. And a lot of that stuff is brought up in this article too, because she got roasted. Like when you see like the replies to like this article specifically, like half
Yeah,
the folks were like conservatives who are like, no, we can never forgive these people for
sure.
locking us down, and the other half would be like, you caused teachers to die by advocating for opening schools, you caused grandmas to die by
We
like
we are
that's the other half of that.
we are not over the COVID thing. The COVID
There's still a bunch of folks who are like
it,
that,
it's
and
a, we
and
were in, yeah, we were in an authoritarian spiral before the COVID thing, Kevin. We were there. And the COVID thing exacerbated it. Like we may be slightly healthier now, like mentally, but we were heading for disaster, and we still are. We haven't. We stopped the speed of the spin, and we're still circling the drain with an authoritarian spiral.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
when
yeah,
we
I mean,
were,
I think that path started well before COVID, but
I
COVID
agree. No, I
certainly,
agree.
gave the excuse for for a lot of, uh, bad
Ab-
stuff to move forward. Um,
Absolutely horrible stuff.
and so,
Horrible,
like,
horrible
it
stuff.
just jump back, like, again, retrospective on some of these policies, like, again, I thought it made sense for, like, the first little bit, like, to keep people out of school because what we thought initially about, like, COVID, like, where I'm talking like March, April, is like, oh, like, it's killing, like, 1 in 5 people because the sample size for the 1 in 5 was based on that cruise where it was a whole bunch of old people who were getting sick and didn't have medical care.
There, and we went with that economic that London school of that London school that Neil. Man, I'll look it up while we're
Yeah,
talking.
I know what you're talking about too.
Ferguson,
Like,
Neil Ferguson is a
yeah,
quack. Okay, he's a
right,
quack.
yeah, and like everyone kind of ran with that because they're
He,
terrified.
he does statistics like a 2-year-old. Okay, if 2% of the population is going to die, then 2% of the population is going to die. He was responsible for the mad cow slaughter too in England
Yeah,
when they had that because of a percentage. They slaughtered beef. Beef was so expensive in England for about 3 years because of Neil Ferguson's incompetence, and they kept the guy in the same same
Yeah,
job.
right. So again, you're like you have a bad sample size. You're extrapolating like a case fatality rate from like bad sample sizes,
Yeah,
incomplete data coming out of
yeah,
China, and things like the nursing home situation, which we'll get to in a second, right?
right.
And like you're thinking like, oh man, like look at all these people dying because they like went to these nursing homes, and like that's we weigh. But a few months later, we kind of realize, oh, like this isn't quite the case. Again, still a dangerous thing.
Right.
Whatever, over 1 million people died. There's still like hundreds of people dying every day from COVID. Like it's
Sure.
still a serious thing. It's just again, what's that level of like balanced risk that you take? And
Yeah.
again, a few months in, like I could get closing schools through like spring 2020. After that, though, I'm
Yeah.
starting to be like, hey, like we knew a lot more by August, September, and we should have done better.
We could have done better. The data was there. It was there. It was obvious. I even got for a short period of time the abundance of caution as a metric. Like you're saying,
Yeah,
that
like that.
spring,
Like
okay?
again, I'm
That
even okay with
spring.
like the
I
the
get it.
the flatten the curve thing too, because again, COVID for some folks, for the folks who get really sick and need support in a hospital, right? If the hospital systems are overwhelmed, that's a serious thing, right? Like,
Sure.
okay, so again, you kind of get that, but then a few months into this, we knew a lot more, and we knew that like how to control this. So, did you need to destroy the economy? Did you need to keep kids out of school? And we know things too, like we talked about, like the mask too. Like, okay, we didn't know a lot, and there's first there's the lying thing, right? Like there's the like, oh, like don't get masks, don't do anything, and then oh, now everyone needs to get masks, now they're required, and you cloth masks are fine. Okay, well, some of
It
that
was
I can write off as like, well, we just didn't know, and we're trying to do the best that we can. But a few months into that, we knew better, and now we know too. Like there's still folks who are talking about mask mandates. Mask mandates did not work. There are individual masks that can protect the individual wearer, like an N95 can protect you
right.
if you wear it properly and you're not in an enclosed space with a sick person for a really long time. But the mask mandate didn't work because what good does it do to walk into a restaurant with a mask on and then take it off? What good does it do if you have a bunch of kids in the school environment fiddling with the mask on their face?
All day long,
Doesn't
and
work.
it's worthless. And look, the reality of it is that children, even children with minor health issues, were not at huge risk to COVID. Okay, like
Yeah.
the statistics had proven that practically right away. Okay, practically early on, we knew this. So we did a very poor job for our kids. And then when people tried to talk about it and point out statistical facts, their livelihood and their branch to humanity was trimmed back by authoritarian garbage. Like they weren't allowed to talk to it about it. Alex Berenson lost his Twitter account. This guy was just telling the truth. He's like, these are the statistics. Nope.
Sometimes.
Well,
But
look,
like my thought is like that guy was like pulling stuff out of his butt like half the time, but also like he should have just been open to criticism for that instead of like having his account shut down. Like that's generally how
okay,
I feel about
fair,
all that stuff.
fair, like fair enough. That's fine. We don't have to. The issue is free speech was quashed. People were reactionary, and we encouraged and enhanced the reactionary mindset in people that are already reactionary. When people are looking out their windows and calling the cops on kids in the park, okay,
Yeah,
when
ridiculous.
kids aren't at risk, all they got to do is stay away from those kids if they think that they're going to catch COVID or they're susceptible to COVID. Like it was simpler than that, and we ruined it.
Like
Like
I mean, like yeah, so like some of the stuff like it's tough for me. Like even like I'm generally supportive of the article's message about like certain types of amnesty, but like I look at the folks who like closed down playgrounds. Like the playground
yeah,
outside my house, the tennis court was closed. Like they locked it up.
that's
Why?
what
For what? Like
they
and it
filled in,
was for like 3 months.
they filled in skate parks with
Yeah,
sand.
that
Okay,
stuff was
like
ridiculous.
oh,
It was
it,
always ridiculous. And
yeah. Joe Farina popped one in. They were trying to limit how many people you could have in your house on Thanksgiving. Like our town, our city, our local city wrote an ordinance that they later almost immediately backed off on, that they were going to be able to arrest you if you have more than 10 people on your property. Like they would be able to come on your property, break it up. it was because it was a college town, but it was too broadly written. They wanted to avoid. They wanted to make sure we had extra leverage to crack down on college parties. The
Yeah.
college kids weren't even here, man. Like,
Yeah.
knock it off. So, anyways, they pulled back on it really quickly,
Yeah.
but
And
thank
again,
God. Like, to credit to the
yeah. Oh,
credit is
and
due.
again, like to me, I'm like, okay, you can be cautious and you can say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do a big gathering in a small, poorly ventilated place. That's a bad idea. But then don't enforce it with violence. Like
Right.
that's all you got to do. Just educate people. Here are the dangers. Here's what could happen. Like and I'm fine with that. Like that's what, if we're going to have a public health apparatus at all, that's what it ought to do.
Right.
You cross the line when you say, and if you don't do that, we're going to throw you in a cage. Or if you do this thing.
With other people who have this disease.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
be
Exactly.
honest,
Which
right?
just gets
Like,
more
holy
people sick.
shit.
And so, there's all that. You get, and this is like all the folks on, the overly cautious side. Again, we got caught up in it. My wife wanted me to like wash her groceries in the beginning, and we figured out like a month in, like, oh, that was stupid. Like that wasn't necessary. It's a
I
bit
was
over the
very
top.
resistant to a lot of it. Though there was, and so also I was like reading a lot of articles and trying to find those obscure articles, and then I do have a background in some statistics. So when people were comparing Sweden to the United States and using graphs, I'm like, first of all, guys, you can't even begin to do that. Okay, like that's not how any of that works. You
Yeah.
could compare Sweden to New York State and then see that Sweden is managing their virus much better than New York State did because the population demographics are similar, the size is similar. Though then
Mhm.
there's the densely populated urban area in New York City that would have to get thrown out of the equation. And then what you found was New York without New York City and Sweden were just about the same, with upstate New York being more spread out, having a slightly less lower problems with COVID than Sweden did. And Sweden's response was reasonable. They kept their schools open. They
Yeah.
they had weeks where like it would spike, like COVID would get into a nursing home and they'd have a high death rate, and people would be like, "Oh my God, Sweden's killing people." And it's like, it's an unfortunate reality. We killed thousands and thousands of people because we mismanaged COVID.
Yeah.
Sweden's doing a better job than we did.
Yeah. It's like in New York, we had the worst of both worlds, right? Like it's
Yeah,
we managed to both lock down and still have a lot of people die at the same time. Sweden, ended up erring a little bit more on the side of like letting people do their thing and ended up getting similar results,
right.
and you could see other things in other states too. And then you have like Australia, which admittedly did not have that many COVID deaths. However, they went back to being a prison colony for a little bit, and that's not a worthwhile trade-off.
That's terrifying, man. Like what they did in Australia, New Zealand, what they did in Australia and New Zealand, bro. Like New Zealand went with the COVID avoidance strategy. Australia tried, but they couldn't. But New Zealand literally went with the COVID, like, we're going to avoid COVID. No one can enter our shores. No one can move around in our country. Then every time they start to open up, COVID would spike. Oh my God, we didn't figure it out. It was just, I can't believe that the tyrants survive elections after that. Like they gotta
Yeah.
go.
So it's ridiculous. Again, I don't want to like leave the other side off the hook. You'd mentioned like the stats about Sweden thing. Like I would get frustrated, like, all right, same with you. I'm like, that's not quite how statistics work. There's like good lessons to be learned here, but like you're kind of manipulating but both sides end up manipulating the Sweden data
Sure.
in different ways. Like because you had like the spike stuff, like so people would be like, oh, see, Sweden, everyone's dying there, and then there'd be other folks who'd be like, oh, everything's perfect in Sweden. Like, no, it's not. It's like it's kind of in between.
There
And
was a
that's
pandemic
fine.
going on. Like
Yeah,
it,
there was pandemic. Like
right.
people were dying. It's a serious thing. You got to deal with it.
Sure.
Like I and I know you and I disagree on this. Like I would kind of
A
get
little.
frustrated on the conservative side too, and libertarian side with like uh not necessarily lockdowns and not like mandates. I think we're
Mhm.
all on the same page about that stuff. But more like ivermectin vaccines,
Yeah.
and actually in the beginning too, like kind of in that May June period where not necessarily, but some folks are like, COVID's not real, it doesn't matter, like no one's dying from it. Like, well, that's not true. That's people really did die from it. There's some
Oh
people
yeah.
in the
No, I
begin,
was.
like way in the beginning, especially, and even like through like all 2020, like it's all fake. And I'm like, no, it's real, and this is a real problem we have to deal with, and like what that response is matters. And so like part of that, like I don't think that Emily Oster used the best example in her article when she's like, oh yeah, like the bleach thing, right? Like okay,
It
like
wasn't a good example.
yeah, I was like,
But
yeah, he sort of said that, but like there's like maybe one couple who is kind of confusedly did that, but like it wasn't tied to Trump necessarily. There are probably better examples of that, and most of it is just that some of the people who brazenly went out and are like, no, it's not real. You have nothing to worry about.
yeah.
Everything's fine. I'm
So let
like,
me hand a criticism to that point right there. When
but
she builds the rest of her premise off of a faulty premise, people react poorly to that. Okay, so I'm not saying she deserves the hostility that she got because her article in and of itself is mostly reasonable. But when she uses the bleach, injecting bleach, the only people that really said people were saying to inject bleach was the mainstream media. Like even Donald Trump didn't
yeah,
say
I
that.
mean, there are lots of memes about it, which
He said
I
shit that he
mostly,
shouldn't have said. Like it was
yeah,
like, okay, you're not a health expert. Take it easy on what you're saying about disinfectants right now. That
yeah.
makes sense. Criticize him for that.
Yeah,
But
and I think like that's part of like the amnesty. There's like the president shouldn't have like spouted his mouth off as he often does, right?
correct,
Like
did.
on things that are
He's
important, knowing
quieter
that
now.
like his what he says carries weight,
Right.
right? Um, so yeah, like that's worthy of criticism, and there's a again a few other things on the right there where I think she could have used a better example.
Yeah.
But kind of like getting to the main like point, the main argument is like, do we need a pandemic amnesty? And like to me, like I fall on the side of like, yes, generally,
Yeah.
although there are definitely some exceptions to that.
Well, just imagine if something that is actually really more dangerous now, with the skepticism that has been introduced into society through the authoritarian spiral, the anti-authoritarians that some of them are not necessarily anti-authoritarian, they're pro my side authoritarians. Like,
right.
so I get it, but it just think now with the damage that has been done to the human psyche about being able to trust big government to handle things like a pandemic. We even have there's a story about Kathy Hochul trying to handle the examination of how New York State handled the pandemic,
Yeah.
and she's failing miserably. Like she's doing a horrible job, like really bad. $4.3 million supposed to be started to be spent in September 20th. They still haven't written one check. They have gathered no information. They've done nothing, and we all know that they failed. We all know putting people in a nursing home was a bad idea, that we should have kept people in hospitals. We should have availed ourselves of the Javits Center. We should have availed
Yeah.
ourselves of the hospital ship
We had
because a
the
densely
whole ship
populated
there, and
urban area had real problems with this disease for whatever reason. And there should be a research done as to why New York City had such a problem with this disease, but we've never, ever like told the truth about it other
right,
than
and that's kind of my thing too. Is like, okay, like again, people really died. There are huge mistakes that governments made, uh, and we need to figure out how to do better. Like could the CDC have responded better? Yeah. Could the
yeah,
FDA have responded better?
yeah,
Absolutely. Could
yeah.
DXA have responded better? Yeah, they could have started by not like killing a bunch of old people in nursing homes. Like that would have been great. Like, and so like that's something to keep in mind for next time. If we see not if when we see the next pandemic happen, because there will be another pandemic, like we need to know how to respond more effectively to it.
Yeah.
And if we spend the whole time like just virtue signaling and blaming and not actually learning from this situation, more people will die than need to next time this happens. And there will 100% be a next time. Like there's zero doubt in my mind there will be another pandemic in the
So the
future.
issue for me, Kevin, will always be like provide appropriate knowledge and don't panic, right? Like
Mhm.
we panic and we made decisions like I want everyone to know, and probably everybody here does know, the nursing home thing was about money. Okay. Costs more money to keep people in hospitals than it does in nursing homes. The insurance payouts were more profitable for nursing homes than they were for hospitals. These things are reality. That's why an emergency executive order was issued to return patients from hospitals
Yeah.
with COVID to nursing homes. That's absolutely real. Absolutely real. And when we pretend
Yeah.
anything else, we are ignoring economics and we're ignoring reality. That's the
Yeah.
bottom
Like
line.
I said, like, and again, the logic of that whole thing, like, never, like, really, passed the smell test, right? Like, oh, well, like, what if the hospitals get full? So, like, we have to keep people in nursing homes in case the hospitals get full. Like, what? No, like, these people, like, need help now, and by keeping them there, you're going to get more people sick because they're not equipped to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
We had a panic here, but in our county, our hospitals never filled up. We were available to help people out. Our hospital administrators went on the record saying, "We're available. We're going to. Our community's panic is not going to stop us." I was really impressed with that message. I thought it was exactly the right message. You can send us people that are sick with COVID. That's what they said,
Yeah.
and it never got to be an issue because they would send them back to nursing homes, right? Like that kind of thing was we could have done better. We were ready to
Yeah.
do better. Period.
Yeah. And so, like, again, here's my like general thoughts on like that issue, right? On the amnesty issue, right? Like, and
Yeah.
it's in this situation, like, was there like a level of negligence, a level of like incompetence that like caused people to die when they didn't need to in that situation? Yeah, like absolutely. So yeah, there needs to be some level of accountability for that.
And
Again, go ahead.
taking things from children when it was obvious that we shouldn't be taking things from children. That's a real
Yeah.
problem.
So like again, and with the children thing, like I sort of have like a cutoff, right? Like again, it's like, okay, in the beginning we didn't know. I know you hate the idea. It's like benefit of the doubt. Like
I know.
we
No, I
we,
don't
we were
hate it. I don't
operating
hate
off
it.
of
I understand it.
we were operating off of some like incomplete information. Sure, okay, I will give you that. By that fall, we should have known better. So the type of folks who like at that point in time were still like, no, lock everything down. Like, no, we knew like, hey, if you we have all this money now for ventilation systems that now we're voting on a bond to fund ventilation systems in
Don't even.
schools
This is the
in
nonsense.
New York State. Even though, yeah, we got
That's
a ton of money for that already, but like it just never ended up like happening in most places. But anywho, like so we knew about like, okay, if you do things like have outdoor classrooms whenever you can, and keep kids outside in the playground, and improve ventilation, and most of the time, even if kids do get sick, they're less likely to get seriously ill in that situation, and then allow like the kids whose families do feel really vulnerable to like have an alternative to that, right? Perhaps through a charter school, but through some distance learning, through another setup. Cool. Instead, what they do, like in the city of Rochester, they had everyone do distance learning, but then a lot of the kids didn't have the equipment or the internet connections to do distance learning. So instead of being in the classroom, with a teacher who's trained to do this, they would send them to the rec centers where there'd be kids of all different ages trying to do distance learning in a big crowded environment. Just why would they do that? That's so ridiculous. So they put like lesser trained, lower paid people at greater risk and kids at greater risk by shutting down the schools. It was so dumb.
It was incredibly dumb. I think even Kathy Hochul admitted that it was dumb and that, I don't know. So, but they did not let go of the emergency powers. It's still in place. Well, I think it's finally been let to die. Hang on, we got a comment out here wants to offer a correction. You don't have to apologize to me, Shelly. Shelly's saying that wasn't real. Sorry, Tim, but they weren't returned to nursing homes. There were COVID positive people. And I know the first woman who was sent to a nursing home where the death toll shot up. And then she follows up with she had never been in a nursing home in her entire life. Were they sending people like as an alternative to a hospital bed to nursing homes?
That's a good question. I kind of thought it was more towards what Shelley was saying, but I don't quite remember that because I thought it was more like if they were positive, they would have them stay in place. But again, the nursing homes in the beginning, especially, weren't like totally equipped to like deal with the contamination protocols necessary to keep it from spreading.
I always thought it was people that had gone from a nursing home to the hospital and then were returned to.
It might be, but like Shelley's saying no, like it might be. We'll have to look that up and we'll post a link to it.
I think we'll have to do some research on that. I believe Shelly. Shelly knows shit. She's right about a lot of stuff a lot of times. Like, so, wow. That actually makes the story worse, doesn't it? That doesn't really help the story. That actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Wow.
Yeah, let's get to a couple more of these comments. I'm gonna
Yeah,
jump,
there's great comments
like
up
way
here.
back up to like John, who says not incompetence, intentional, no doubt.
I'm,
What do you
I'm
think of that?
I'm sympathetic to it because I do at some point think that stupidity becomes malice and that incompetence when you can be willfully incompetent and still keep your power, keep your paycheck, and write rules to benefit yourself and your friends, that's willful. So I do know that there was some level of panic. I do know at some point I was so disappointed hearing my health commissioner of Otsego County say abundance of caution that it felt willful. Some of it was so incompetent. Like there were, yeah. Go ahead. I know.
Yeah,
Please.
well,
I know.
I
Bring
was
me
gonna
in.
say the Hanlon's razor thing, right? Like, never attribute to malice, which is adequately explained by stupidity. And I know you're gonna come back with like, there's a level of stupidity that's as
Right. That
malice.
is malice. That is in fact malice.
Yeah, it's like
But
it's weaponized incompetence, right? So
mhm,
like I can see there are situations where that happens, like where there's like there's because there's no accountability, there's no pressure to do the right thing, there's no pressure to do better because they'll maintain their power, their status, their wealth, their freedom, even if they totally bungle this thing, right? And
yeah,
and even if people's lives are on the line. And that's like, yeah, that is unfortunately not just the story of the pandemic, but the story of the political class generally in the
yeah,
United States.
yeah.
Like how much accountability was there for like totally botching like Iraq and Afghanistan?
None.
Yeah,
None.
none,
Right.
zero
None.
accountability, like, at all.
So
Like, just complete, like, again, and that espe Iraq especially, like, just folds over the incompetence and malice, like, into one, right? Like, it is definitely both,
sure.
in that situation. So, like, I'm not unsympathetic to your argument either. I generally, again, I will give people the benefit of the doubt in incomplete information, but there comes a point in time, and I've said this, like, even when I did the like, after Kathy Hochul came back and was like, "Yeah, we're opening schools, everything's open again. Yeah, it's great. We're still gonna continue the emergency, but,
Yeah, we're gonna keep the power. And they there was I was sympathetic to Salka's argument that look, I did vote for this stuff because I kind of gave him a hard time. Um, but we were supposed to renegotiate it once a month, and we never renegotiated it. And I'm like, okay, well, your symbolic vote of no would have made me happier than this. You know what I mean? Like I knew
Yeah, right.
it's like don't grant these jokers any quarter. Don't grant them any extra power. Even in a state of an emergency, even in a health crisis, you have an obligation. Like that's the time where you're supposed to prove your mettle, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to be afraid to argue for your political points and your political views and your constituents' rights and beliefs, even in the face of a pandemic. Like you can't convince me otherwise. You and plus we could have found a way to do it. Like
Yeah.
zoom it up, fellas. Let's
Yeah,
go.
no, it's, like, wild to me, like, both, like, the, New York State legislature and Congress is like, "Well, how do we meet if you can't be in person?" Like, guys, everyone else is doing it. It's just you who hasn't figured it out.
Massey was Thomas Massey was great. He forced a in-person meeting, and everybody was really mad at him. And like somebody called him a third-rate congressman from Kentucky, and he's like talking to a reporter, and he's like, "I'm pretty sure I'm at least second rate, aren't you?" And it was just he has a good sense of humor. He's very entertaining. I like that guy.
Yeah, we get this one too. It's up a little ways, but there's
Yeah.
still people in blue state of New York that are wearing masks. I think as far as closing schools and shutting down everything in the first month, nobody really knew what it was. But beyond that, I think everything should have been open by the time we got into April 2020, where I knew who was being affected by the virus, and most of the people were older people and seniors. That some politicians didn't affect at all. I kind of mostly agree with you there. One, it was
Yeah.
funny. Like I was at a coffee shop today, and there's like someone. What killed me is like they wore a mask inside the coffee shop, and it was a cloth mask, and I'm like, okay,
Alyssa Milano and her
yeah,
hand
and
knitted
I'm like,
mask with yarn, a yarn, big pile of yarn across her face,
yeah,
saying,
it's like,
"I'm
okay,
protecting
again,
myself from
I could give
COVID."
you like in the beginning, like there's like people thought like, hey, maybe this does help with like some of the spread, but we started to figure out like, it doesn't help all that much, like the help is minimal, and if you want to protect yourself and you want to protect others, like you got to get like an actual good mask, right?
Yeah,
It does help, but you have to wear a good mask and you have to wear it consistently, right? That's not
absolutely.
what this person was doing. I'm like, come on, man. But just to your thing, like I'd probably give it a little bit later in April, but like generally, your point is made, Joseph.
I'd have gave it to the end of May, June. I was very forgiving of the notion that we should societally do something. Okay, but after that, I'm like, why isn't Otsego County opening up? Why aren't we doing these things? Why aren't we? What is going on here? Like, why are we destroying people's livelihoods? It was just. And we opened early compared to other places, and there was a lot of people like me that kind of just did what they did, and the cops left us alone, and that's that. You know what I mean? So it was like, whatever.
Yeah.
Just disappointing that we let the authoritarians win.
Yeah. And to that end, Patty saying, don't get me started on this. COVID was their trial run for their plan next time.
I want her to be wrong, but I'm not sure that she is, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So I got mixed feelings about it. Like, a pandemic is legitimately an extraordinary situation, right? Like, we haven't had like a pandemic of this scale in a long time. It's just a matter. Like, I think there's a ratchet effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I generally assume that like the political class is actually incompetent in most of these things. I don't think it was like coordinated in the same in like a major way. I do think like there's a bunch of people like, yeah, but like, well, we got to do this thing right now to like, keep some power just because we got to fix everything. It was just haphazardly stumbling their way into authoritarianism that they'll never really ratchet back down.
Well, I see it. Like, we see the authoritarian arguments. Good news though. I think it was Ottawa or one of the provinces in Canada said we will no longer take advice from the World Economic Forum. Like, I'm not saying like that in and of itself is a good thing, but they took this stand to make their constituents less nervous about this new world order thing, which I kind of liked. Just like, those guys are jokers.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to listen to them again. Some of the stuff like it's
that come out of it.
It ranges from like, to me, like benign to like terrifying. Like they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I said, we did the whole show on this. Like it's the negative growth people that scare me. Like, nope, that's bad. That's gonna kill a lot of folks. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, I am. Guys. My vote is against authoritarianism, as you know. Lee and Kathy are way more similar to each other than they are to you. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm committed to doing it. So I don't think AOC and Elon Musk. I think they got something going, Kevin. I'm pretty sure.
And Elon Musk. Oh my God, we're gonna talk about the Elon Musk stuff.
Twitter war, man. It's going on. It's going down. It's going down right now. We got to get away from this serious stuff.
Yeah, I know. All right. So, yeah, no, we're getting towards the end of the night, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. So we'll talk about
I caught you off guard with that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. So I didn't see the tweet where like I'm kind of half remembering. AOC was dunking on the like maybe do the $8 verification thing.
She's very upset about that $8.
Yeah, and
very
Elon Musk was like, thanks for the feedback. Now pay me $8. And it was like, ooh, owned. And I'm like, all right, calm down. Calm down.
It's a little bit like Russian trolling. It's like it's kind of like fake in a way. He just knows this is going to be good for business. She kind of knows this is going to appeal to her fan base and the way that she plays things.
They're both putting on a show. Like it's a bit of kayfabe.
And she hops into her Tesla and it's like, Elon's already made all the money off of her. Like, he should be like, if you buy a Tesla, you can have the $8 for free, like for like 3 years. And then she'd be like, oh, I'm covered.
Yeah. But legit, that's a dumb idea though. Like the $8 verification thing.
Seems like it. You got verified for free, right?
I did get verified for free, but because I was a federal candidate, right? Like that's why I got verified. It's the whole purpose of the verification system, right? Like the underlying purpose of this is supposed to be like, we look at accounts that might be impersonated, and then like we give them verification to say like, nope, this is like the real person who is like running that account, right? So like mine had, I had the blue check, which I still have for whatever reason, and then underneath it said like, candidate for federal office or candidate for like U.S. House. So like I submitted my stuff, they checked it against like campaign paperwork, and like that's what it was. And for that reason, like it's good, right? You want like candidates for federal office or other like prominent people to be able to say, yes, this is really me, and that's the real person saying this, not like a parody account who's impersonating a famous person, and people think is real, right? Which still happens sometimes, but it's supposed to be a quick way to be like, oh wait, that person doesn't have the blue check, like that's not the real Donald Trump.
Right.
Hey, wait, that guy has a mustache in his picture too. Like that's should have seen that coming.
Those are my favorites, though. Those guys troll Twitter accounts like what the heck, Dr. Claire Richards or something like that. I was friends with that it's a total troll account, right? And I was friends with them when they had like 20 followers, right? And now they have like 20,000 followers, and they get retweeted occasionally by a politician saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe this authoritarian psychopath." And it was totally been a fake account the whole time. And it's just it was epic.
All right. Well, there's the one account, and I think the guy running it ended up dying, but it's like the North Korean account.
I didn't know about this one.
Oh yeah, so there's I'll see if I can find it and share, like again, I think the guy who was running it died, but it was like the Democratic Republic of North Korea like official account, right? Didn't have the blue check, but they would like just post as if they were like the official PR arm of like North Korea, but they'd be making fun of them the whole time.
Right.
There's just be like, yep, our supreme leader like, golfed 18 holes and got like 40 under par. Congratulations, Supreme. It would just be stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, that's good stuff.
Or they'd be dunking on the U.S. for whatever dumb thing Trump or Biden was doing, and it'd be like, unlike Joe Biden who falls off bikes, Supreme Leader can bike 3,000 miles a day. Just
yeah.
But again, that stuff's great. But going back to like the verification system, like if everyone gets like the $8 like thing, the checks, they don't actually mean anything anymore. Just
correct.
Which is fine, but the blue checks, like I have a blue check. I don't have that many followers. You definitely have more followers than me, Tim.
I got a lot of followers.
Yeah, you get way more engagement than me. Like it doesn't give me any actual power. It just says like, yeah, that Kevin Wilson who ran for Congress once, that's really him.
That's
like
really him.
That's all it does. And in this $8 thing, like it comes with like some extra stuff. Like Twitter already has that. Like you can pay for it right now. Like it's not like a new feature. It's actually been around for a few months. You can get like Twitter Blue, and you can get like the extra features like the edit button. And
it'd be nice to have an edit button.
Yeah, you can pay for it. Like there's no waiting. You do it now.
People suggested that AOC should pay for the edit button because in her tweet battle with Elon, she's like, you should pay for the blue check and get the edit button because you are messing up your tweets. It was, as you can tell, I'm a bit, I have some disdain for AOC.
Yeah.
I'm definitely coming down on Elon's side because he's an older dude and she's like, I don't know,
So you're saying you're sexist is
I am
saying. Yeah.
Sexist, or can I dislike AOC because of how she runs her mouth?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot to criticize there.
Okay, that's fair, right? Like she does some things, so she's kind of taking on this $8 Twitter thing and Elon's fighting with her, which is also the same exact thing. They're two sides of the same coin there, right? Like they're both increasing their own value by poning the other one. It's
I mean, that's all it is. It's just like they're virtue signaling for entertainment purposes, and that's really it. That's like the beginning and end of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Dr. Claire Foster. That's the doctor I was talking about. She's just hilarious. And sometimes like she was a radical COVID, get your vaccine, get two kind of person. And like, she was joking most of the time, you know what I mean? And occasionally she got through with one where like, I think Ted Cruz retweeted her and it was just hilarious. It was so
great. No, there's a bunch of those accounts. Like every time I see like, oh, look at this ridiculous leftist on Twitter, I'm like 90% sure that's fake. That's not real. Y'all got fooled by it. I'll check it. Like something occasionally it is, but like there's a lot of it. Like, look at this ridiculous leftist. Like, nah, some right winger made that up, and the other side will do the same thing too. It's ridiculous. We'll get the Joseph comment here. Who says like you can get rid of bot accounts by charging money to verify, but a free way to do it would just be to set up 2-factor authentication. Yeah, I mean, Elon's trying to make money. That's
Yeah.
but
He
and again,
made
I don't even know that the verification actually like fix it. Like there's ways to automate that too. Like you unless like the verification comes with actual like far more documentation of like who you actually are too. I guess you could do that, but
yeah.
again, I don't.
It'd just be an 8. I'm just a freedom variant 8 with a blue check mark now for $8 a month.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was it again at that point? Wasn't mean. If everyone could get a blue check mark, then it doesn't mean anything.
It means I pay $8 a month.
Yeah, it means it like that. That's gonna mark you as a chump. Like,
In
hey,
my opinion,
yeah,
I never got verified, so I wasn't quite sure. Like, I, I was never bought into the blue check mark thing.
yeah.
And I'll be honest, Kevin, you're in an elitist group of numbskulls sometimes. When I see some of the things that blue check mark people say, I'm just like,
Oh yeah, no,
wow.
but like again, having a blue
Warren
check
Boebert
mark.
has a blue check mark. I mean, Nancy Pelosi has a blue check mark. That's who you're hanging with, bro.
It doesn't make you smarter, better, or even like provide you with more reach or anything. Like literally, the only like sort of cool advantage it gets is you get like a special section for other verified people when they reply to you.
Oh, that's cool. That's
like
great.
that's like the only thing. So like when people
It's
who
a
are
tool for
verified
the
reply to
elite.
me, it goes in like a separate section than like
That-
all the riffraff like you. That's
For $8 a month, I can be an elite and hang out in a special
it's
room.
just gonna mark you like a bunch of people are gonna be in your DMs trying to sell you snake oil. Like
I
this
already
guy.
got people in my DMs selling me weed and guns and knives and stuff. It's awesome. It's just like whatever. Ammunition, they'll ship me ammunition.
I just man, you get all that stuff, man. All I get is porn bots. What the hell? What am I doing wrong?
I get hot chicks offering me pictures. I don't know that they're porn bots. I haven't proven that.
Yeah, I guess I don't know that they're bots, but like it does seem suspicious.
I could make assumptions, I guess. I don't know. I go with it's my stunning personality, but okay. All right, so look, we got to cover this one. I hope you don't mind me, but yeah. So look, I want to tell the whole story. I probably mentioned it earlier, but Patty is doing some work up in Plattsburgh, right? And she's like inspired. She's a former Bernie bro, right? And she's found us, and she says she feels like she's not as crazy anymore. Like people that see the government as a problem, that we could use the government to craft solutions. So Larry goes up to Plattsburgh. They get a little, thanks to Patty and some of her friends and her proactive stuff, they get a little media coverage. While they're getting the media coverage, the guy with the beard in the background says, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to run for the city ward that I'm in," and that has gotten media coverage. Larry is heading back up there on Saturday at 1:00 at the Valcourt Brewing Company, because that's guys, that's who Larry is. You guys want to talk about Zeldin, Schmeldin, and Hokel Yokel? Like Larry comes to us and helps us and talks about ideas and solutions. And that's what he's going to do this weekend in Plattsburgh to help our friend Zach Remy. And Zach is a dedicated member of the Libertarian Party. He's a Cub Scout leader. He's a hardworking guy. He's got a couple kids. He's invested his life in Plattsburgh. He's a good dude. And he would be proactive on the Plattsburgh Council. Like he would absolutely be great at it. And he would help get some of Patty's ideas, solutionary ideas, because even though she's a Bernie bro, she's a solutionary, and solutionaries can fix this mess that we have. So I'm very excited about this. And I'm very excited that Larry is taking this trip. It's like 47 hours from Queens up to Plattsburgh. It's like forever.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 hours, 5.5 hours.
I don't know. I'd imagine it's a trek.
It's a long time. So
yeah, that's cool. I'll have to check out that campaign.
And it's like a last minute writing campaign. But like he even got the guy who's holding the seat now, but decided to retire. That guy, Zach, went and said, "Look, you want to give me an endorsement?" The guy said, "I'll hand out stuff for you." He's like, "Will you endorse me?" The guy said yes. So like it's something like 300 votes, give or take, can win this election. The guy that endorsed Zach got 294 of 297 votes the last time. Yeah, it's uphill the whole way, Mr. Becker, all the way, Dr. Becker, all the way up to Plattsburgh from Queens. It's that quite an elevation change.
That's true.
So it's a big thing. And look, the opportunity to vote for Larry this election cycle ensures, if we get him enough votes, that he's going to continue with these kind of efforts. They're kind of Herculean efforts. You look at Zeldin and Hochul, and all they do is craft platitudes to and literally write legislation that fills their campaign coffers, guys. There's like Kathy Hochul filled her campaign coffers off of weed legislation, like this last cycle. Like millions of dollars went to her for guys and a local guy, Kevin. I don't know if I told you this. I have a local guy, a local farmer, grows his summer crop after getting robbed in February for his nursery plants, right? Like somebody came in and stole his nursery plants, had to start over, replants them, plants his crop. Some guy's got the paperwork for him. He's doing his job. He's growing weed, you know?
Yeah.
The New York State police come in and take his freaking weed in September. Just take it because he's not licensed correctly. There's been reports that he was selling weed at the bottom of his driveway. He's like, I'm like, did you? He's like, I don't think I should answer that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He's a good guy. He tried to follow the laws. He's been growing weed for years. He's gotten all sorts of licensing over the years to do this, participate in this craft. And now they changed the licensing requirements. And the New York State Police, with a no-knock warrant, come and take his weed. And this guy has got PTSD, served in the military. So this is his own medicine on some level.
Yeah.
He makes tinctures and stuff like that for people. And they took his crop, man. It's bullshit.
No, that's ridiculous. You know, that's just kind of the petty stuff that we've grown to accept. Not us, but like the public has generally accepted over the year. Like, oh well, he was growing drugs and he wasn't allowed to. He wasn't like, no, it ain't right. It never was right. But especially ain't right now as people are starting to do this, like with the sanction of government. You just didn't fill out the paperwork right or pay the right bribes. You know, like come on.
I had a couple good guys show up at Larry's event that I had here last weekend. They're technically the underdogs. A couple Democrat guys showed up, told them, and George was there to tell a story himself. But you could tell that they wanted to say, well, you weren't properly licensed, so they stole your weed. Like they wanted to say that, but they knew it wasn't the best crowd to say that in. Like, and they're nice guys, and they participated. They offered us good solutions. They do have good ideas. They're very disappointed when we explain to them what happened to us. They understand it. They're very disappointed about this ballot access thing that happened to the Libertarian Party, and they're just like independent candidates should be able to get the same number of votes as a Democrat or same number of signatures as a Democrat and a Republican to get on the ballot. We're at 3 times that now, right? Mm-hmm. So they would lower it down to at least that. So they were good guys and they listen. They want votes. They have good ideas. Honestly, Dan Butterman, I think he's my district. I might vote for him just to prove a point.
There you go.
That he shows up, and I like guys that show up.
And that's again. It is legit half the battle. Yeah, I get the folks who say that. Patty says, Kevin's calm and Tim's sarcasm won me over. Right on, Patty.
I love it. It's great. And Patty, thank you for all the effort you're putting in. You're an inspiration to me. It's because of people like Patty that we do this, Kevin, really. Like, you know what I mean? She's proactive. She's not your standard disappointed conservative or young Republican that kind of grew up and said, oh, wow, Republicans are crazy. And like, we know they're there. We need more of them. They can help us shape our message. They can have impact on our future. Like, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. So, and that's important, I guess.
Yeah. I understand.
I mean, it is important. I don't mean I guess. I shouldn't say that.
No, yeah, just I guess undercutting yourself there. I guess.
It seems like it's important. It's important to me. People like Patty and her brother and like and Zach, all of them, they're doing a great job up there in Plattsburgh.
Yeah, I understand. But all right, I think we're gonna call it a night though.
Yeah.
It's been a good hour.
Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. I declare it.
Declared, yeah. Fair.
All right,
no, good discussion. So like I was a little bit like, all right, is it gonna get heated? No, it's good the whole time, you know.
We're so close. Like it's I get it. I sometimes feel as though maybe you're responding to a perception that I'm perceiving it slightly different. Like I think that people were responding more to the Atlantic. Now, perhaps they were really angry at that particular article because of certain things in it, but it was the overall Atlantic's.
Yeah.
And the Atlantic actually wasn't even that bad about, like, there were other, like the New York Times and the LA Times that were way worse with their headlines. So the Atlantic always, as progressive as it is, presents persuasive arguments sometimes.
Yeah, every once in a while. I'll say I try to keep an open mind and can not always assume good, but don't necessarily assume bad either. And
You'll get there.
say now, I'm gonna do a recommendation to you. There's a podcast. Well, I recommend this guy all the time, Andrew Heaton. He did his
Yes, you
recent
do.
podcast on the political orphanage was how he got canceled at Oxford, but like his political philosophy is very similar to mine. He's a libertarian dude, but like how he approaches like other people who don't necessarily agree with him is how I approach things.
He's hilarious too, though,
Yeah.
bro. Like, he is absolutely hilarious. He's great. So
But
I've definitely paid more attention to him since you've kept recommending him, and everybody else out there should too.
yeah. All right. So that's how I end the night. Anything else to add before we close out?
Not that I could think of, man. Like, I'm writing in Larry Sharp. You're not going to change my mind.
There we go. No, good last thing to end on. Right in Larry Sharp.
There we go.
It.
Perfect.
I have right in Larry Sharp on my saddlebags. People engage in conversation. Right on. All right, good way. Yeah, no, that's what I'm gonna do. Tuesday, I'm gonna go in. I like voting on election day.
Yeah.
Go in Tuesday. I'm gonna write in.
All right, let's do it. Change the world.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good night, folks. Thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Take care, guys.